Welcome students, this is your first video on safety. Specifically, we're going to be talking about the safety systems that we use in chemistry. So what is a hazardous material symbols? What are these things? Well, they're labels or symbols that are used to indicate hazardous material. So why do we use symbols? Well, first of all, they're universal. All languages understand them, so if you don't know a language, you're in it. We just had something that said poisonous on it, you might drink it or use it. So this is why we use symbols, because symbols are universal. So let's look at some common symbols. What do these symbols mean? Well, clearly, if you've been alive before, you'll recognize this means telephone, this means recycle, this means airplane, this means peace. This is female, I had that right there, and this means male, that's right. So again, those are symbols that you probably already know. So we have two sets of symbols for safety, and the first set that we have is one that you've seen already. It's called HHPS. It means hazardous household product symbols. The second one you might have heard of is known as WHMIS, which stands for Workplace Hazardous Material Information System. So in HHPS, which you've seen before, these are the household product symbols. If you look at this, you've seen that one before. That means poison. You've heard this one before, and this probably means flammable. We have explosive, and we have corrosive. Corrosive means that it can eat away your tissue, and you definitely want to wash your hand if you got something corrosive on your hands. So the degree of danger is depending on how many sides the shape around it has. So for example, this has 3 sides, so it's the least dangerous. This has 4 sides, this is more dangerous. And this has 8 sides, which is the maximum danger. So if we put it all together, what does this mean? Let's take a look at this first symbol here, and let's take a look at the last symbol way down here. When we look at those, which one is more dangerous? Take a moment and answer the question. If you said the top one is more dangerous, you are right, because it has more corners. Okay, the bottom one has less corners, only 3, so it's a lot less dangerous. So if you notice the symbols that we have across the middle here, middle section here to here, that's the medium danger. Now again, we have poison, we have flammable, we have explosive, and then finally the one on the right, we have corrosive. So that's not good enough for the workplace. So we have to get a different information system for the workplace called WHMIS. And it's used in all workplaces. So no matter what job you get, you're going to deal with this. And it's several different symbols. The first symbol that you may have seen before is something known as compressed gas. And these are dangerous because they can explode when they get super hot. Some examples that we have are aerosol cans or propane tanks. In workplaces, you'll see this symbol on it. Another example is flammable. This looks just like the one before, but it's also used in WHMIS, and it means that things may burst into flames. Some examples of that are gasoline or natural gas. You also have something known as an oxidizing material. Now, if you recall from earlier science classes, to burn something you need fuel and you need oxygen. And this O on fire means that it's oxygen. It's providing oxygen. It's an oxidizer or an oxidizing material. And if you put this close to something, it can actually cause things to explode. For example, bleach is an excellent oxidizer. So it will actually accelerate a fire if it comes into contact with something combustible like gasoline. Another thing that we have here is corrosive materials, and this is things like acids are the most common thing that you would probably see. So sulfuric acid, hydrochloric acid, all these things, if you left them on your hands and they were really concentrated, they would eat through your hand. And if you just leave them on there, they may cause your burns to happen. So if you have any, like girls specifically use a lot of beauty products, sometimes these are corrosive when mixed with other chemicals, and you can get burns on your faces if you use certain types of beauty products, for example. The most common dangerous things are like battery acids. This is why it's important that we dispose of these properly, or things like hydrochloric acid, which are found in some of our workplaces that we work in. We also have dangerously reactive materials. We will never deal with any of these things in our school, but they cause severe reactions when exposed to water or heat. So there's certain things like dynamite, for example, or actually we do have, I'm lying, I'm going to show you this in class. So this is potassium. If we put that into water, you'll notice that it reacts with water. So that's dangerously reactive. So we're going to look for that Wemba symbol on potassium and a few other chemicals now that I come to think about it. And finally, we have poisonous infectious materials, not finally, but poisonous infectious materials that cause immediate and serious toxic effects. They may cause death almost immediately, like cyanide or arsenic. Again, we don't have anything like that in the lab for real this time. This is not located in Leamington High School. We have toxic poisonous materials. These things are actually, we don't really have any of these either because we're not allowed to, because they're really dangerous because they can cause cancer over the long term, or birth defects, or even sterility. If you want to know what that is, you can talk to me about that later. Some examples are lead and mercury. Any lead that we have, or mercury we'd have in this school, it's actually it's stored in a way that is not poisonous and infectious. But you have to be very careful when you're dealing with things like lead and mercury because they can cause long-term effects. We have poisonous infectious materials. These are biohazardous infectious materials like viruses, for example, or you may have heard of SARS before, or any sort of virus or biological material that can make you sick would have this symbol on it. So what is an MSDS? Well, an MSDS is a material safety data sheet. And every single chemical in this school and any workplace that you go to will have an MSDS. And it gives you important information on the safety information just in general, like how to handle that chemical. So here's an example of an MSDS for wood dust. Believe it or not, any chemical in any workplace will have an MSDS. And it gives you information on that. For example, if we look through this, it says it's going to light on fire at 500 degrees Fahrenheit or 250 degrees Celsius. And that means that we have to be careful with wood dust in the workplace around hot materials because it will auto-ignite and cause a fire. Wood dust doesn't seem that dangerous, but it actually needs an MSDS if it's going to be used in any workplace or school. So that's it for your first video, guys. This is the WMIS, so I'm going to ask you a few questions. I hope you enjoyed it, and ask me any questions if you have any. Thank you.